So here we go, year 4. Thank you guys for sticking around even though I'm a few days late making this video. I've been very sick this week and I think I'm finally good enough that I can get on camera. I might devolve into some coughing fits, but I will try to edit that out. So thank you guys for coming back and checking on me this year. Basically, every year since 2015 on July 9th, even though I'm late this year, I am making a video updating you on my student loan debt. I'm going to update you on the balance, and I'm going to tell you everything that's been going on as far as dealing with the student loan companies and also with the pending lawsuits. I left off last year by basically saying that I was just trying to pay the minimum payments on my reduced payment plans in order to keep my student loan balances at bay. And that is essentially what I did. My student loan balances from last year to now are about the same. I didn't even put the exact numbers in here because when I checked them last month, they weren't any different to note. They weren't more, they were just slightly less. I think maybe a couple $100s less than they were last year. But as I explained in last year's video, what I'm trying to do is to hold those at bay as long as I can so that I can get all my other finances in order, whether that be saving an emergency fund, increasing my income in general, paying off debt, so that once that stuff is all in place, that I can just throw all the money at the student loan debt. And that actually has worked out pretty well. I have, though, made some progress with my Navient loans. And those are my private student loans. I have 2 of them. One's around $17,000. The other one's around $43,000. With those, I have been paying on them for about 3 years now, and the payments are on the rate reduction plan. And they started out at $256 a month and were like that for a year. And then they went up to, I think, $280 something. They're now at about $310. And $410 is the full amount if I wasn't on the reduced program. When they were in the $275 range for payment or $285 range, they had a 2% interest rate. And I think twice in the last year I was approved for a 6-month extension of that rate reduction program, which gives me that lower payment and it also reduces the interest rate. But what they told me last time is that it is a sort of a weaning method where they wean you into being able to pay the full payment. And that is kind of where I'm headed. I'm only about $90 some difference between what I pay now and what the full payment is. And that does make me feel good that I'm slowly getting to the point where I can make the full payment. What surprised me this year was that when they raised my payment from like $275 to $310, that my interest rate changed. Originally, way back 3 years ago, they gave me a 1% interest rate, raised it to 2%, and it stayed there. They changed the interest rate to 4.5%. And that is either what it's supposed to be on the normal loan or it's getting close to it. I can't remember the exact figure on that. But what surprised me was not that they raised the interest rate. It was that for somehow, even though they only raised the payment amount about $60 or so, and then they more than doubled the interest, somehow after doing that, I started to see some progress being made. Because prior to this, over the last 2 or so years, looking at the smaller loan, the $17,000 one, all I would really see is that I'd pay off a couple $100, they'd jack up the interest rate, and it'd go right back up, and then I'd pay off another couple $100, and it was just this cycle over and over again. So over the period of like 2 years, I'd paid thousands of dollars toward this loan, and it was the same amount. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense that if you double the interest rate and only increase the payment a little bit, that the balances would go down. But somehow that is what's happening, and I'm not going to complain about that. I finally got the $17,000 loan down to $17,000, and after this month, it is going to go to like $16,900 and some. And that was originally $16,000 I took out. So I'm getting close to the original amount, having paid off basically all the interest at this point, which is pretty exciting for me to even get to that point. The larger loan in there too, that was a $45,000 loan, is now paid down to like 43 something. And even though the progress with it is slower, I am seeing that decrease as well. So I can imagine that when it does go up to the full payment of 410 or whatever that is, then I'm going to see a bigger decrease every month, which will, of course, show you more progress every month in my net worth in the monthly budget videos. My other group of loans is my federal loans, and those are with Great Lakes. Great Lakes has been always good with working with me, and they had put me on a $0 per month payment plan, income-based repayment, and through that, that was through, I think, March of this year. Starting in January, I started my new job. So in January, when I had to redo my income forms for them, I told them, hey, I have a new job and I'm making this much money. And they're like, all right, you got to start paying us here in a couple months. And I think it was March that kicked in. So since then, I've been paying about $64 per month toward those loans. And these are the loans that are actually kind of hurting me. Because every month, the balance of these loans increases despite me making payments toward them. And when I go in my monthly budget review and I say, okay, my debt's decreased by this much, well, it's usually a couple $100s or so, but what cuts into that is that these other loans, despite me paying for them, are still going up. I'm currently 7 years into paying those loans. And because I took these loans out before 2014, and they're federal loans, I have to pay for 20 years before any of the remainder is forgiven. So I have 13 years left to pay, and they're currently projecting that I'm going to go up to the full payment, and then I'm going to be able to still completely pay them off in the next 13 years. Now, realistically, that's not going to happen because I'm not making much more, and even if they raise my payment, they're probably not going to raise it that much. So more than likely at the end of the 20-year period, I'm still going to have some of this forgiven. So I'm not as concerned maybe about it continuing to accrue interest, but I would just like that to not be the case. But it's just something I have to deal with for the time being. I feel like I talk about this every year, but again, Navient has reported, I think, 2 payments late this year that weren't late, and I have had to dispute that. It always drops my credit score, and then after it's removed, it comes back up, but not all the way. And so that is something that continues to happen year after year. But I will give them credit that they did fix one thing, and that is that my payment is supposed to come out on the 15th of the month, and it almost never did. It could come out the 15th or it could come out the 25th, and anywhere there in between. But since my last time of renewing the 6-month rate reduction program, it does come out the 15th of every month. So that's one less thing that I have to worry about, is making sure I have enough money in that account to have that pulled out of there. What I think everybody really wants to know about, though, is how are the lawsuits going? And my answer to that is, I mean, all I know is that when I left off last year, I was waiting for them and had been waiting for them at that point for 8 months to send a summons to me. I'd been sued twice. I was waiting on the summons in order to respond to it. I had an attorney. I was ready to fight everything. She said I had a great case. They didn't really have a case. And then essentially nothing happened. So where I'm at right now, and I'll just tell you the story of what happened. Essentially, I waited all of last summer, all of last fall, into about March of this year, just checking with the court. I'm like, hey, have you guys sent this out yet? Did you send it here? How did you do it? And they'd be like, oh yeah, we've sent this letter and this letter and this letter, and they tried it various different ways, and I just never got anything. And I mean, look, I get mail every day. I don't understand what is going on that they can't get mail to me, but it just never would come. And my lawyer said, well, hey, no sense in paying me until you get that, and then we'll respond to it. But it makes sense. Why pay her $500 a month to represent me when they haven't even contacted me? After contacting the court several more times, they told me that my address had been changed with the court. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because I didn't move. And she said, oh, well, there's this paper. And she emailed it to me, and it showed that I had filled out a paper changing my address to an address that I lived at when I was 15 years old. I'm 34. And I told her, I was like, I did not fill this out. And I didn't really get a response back from the court after that. So I'm not sure what I do, but essentially what happened is someone, I'm presuming the student loan companies that are suing me, filed a fraudulent document with the court purporting to be me, telling them, oh, hey, here's my actual address since you haven't been able to send this to me. But it's not my actual address. And in fact, I never really truly lived there. It was a short period of time, and also it was like 19 years ago. So I have no idea where they got this address. And I don't know what on earth made them think that they could submit a document to the court as me claiming to change my address to this other thing. After that, one of the lawsuits, not both of them, both of them would make sense, but nothing makes sense in this. One of the lawsuits sent me a certified letter to that address. And very soon after that, they sent a letter to the court claiming that they had received service at that address for me. So that means that somebody, whoever lives at that address, went and claimed the letter, and either claimed to be me, or the post office assumed it was me, I guess, and took this letter that was a summons from the court at that address. I don't know who lives there. They don't know me. They wouldn't have any way to contact me. So I don't have any hard feelings toward them. But in Ohio, service is a really tricky thing, because most of the time, if you think about being served by the court, it's somebody like walking up to you and saying, you've been served. But that doesn't happen in Ohio. In Ohio, they mail it out to you by certified mail. And then if they can't get it to you by certified mail, then they send it standard first class mail. And that's where a lot of people get screwed over. Because if the company has the wrong address, which they clearly do because they sent 15 or so certified letters that came back to them undeliverable, then they'll just send to the same wrong address a first class letter, and if it doesn't come back to them, then they're like, yeah, we got service. And that's essentially what happened in this case, I think. After they received service, quote unquote, for that, they then decided to change the other one over to this incorrect address as well. Then they filed for dismissal of both lawsuits, stating that they had received service at this other address in another county, and therefore it wasn't in this court's jurisdiction, so they needed the cases dismissed. And the judge dismissed both of them. And I'm just here like, I'm still here. I haven't heard anything, and I haven't been a part of this whatsoever, and just still sitting here waiting. Now, with all of that said, I wasn't completely inactive in all of this. I started that new job in January, and at the time I was still working a couple part-time jobs, so I had a decent amount of money coming in. And it's been very anxiety-producing for me to just wait around for a year and a half or 2 years or whatever, waiting for a letter so I could go fight in court. I finally just got so frustrated back in March of this year I just contacted my lawyer and I said, hey, I know you told me to wait, but like, I don't know what's going on with these people and I have the money. Can we just like contact them proactively? Be like, hey, here's my right address. We've given this to you before. Send this out to us so that we can go forward with this court case. That was my idea because I'm just like sick of all of it. My attorney said not to do that. She said, look, there's no reason to do that. She's like, I understand you're frustrated, but there's no reason to. So I followed her advice, and about a week or maybe 2 weeks after I had wanted to just jump forward with things, that was when they filed with the court and claimed that they got service in this other county. At that time, I contacted her again and told her that, and she's like, okay, well, at this point, you have two choices. You can either reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm still living here. This is my right address, and have them just, continue to try to get me served, or I can just ignore it, and I just need to check with that other county every once in a while and make sure that they haven't filed there where they're obviously not going to be able to find me, in order to avoid like a default judgment at some point because they never sent it and never contacted me. While I was contemplating which of those two I should do, they went ahead and dismissed the suits. So it kind of took my power of choice away there. And so now I just check with that county every once in a while, and it's now been 4 months and nothing has happened. Unless they've sued me in some random county somewhere that I have no clue about. And I have no confidence that they would contact me or the court would contact me at all. So just to back up a little bit, I've only once in this entire thing, which is almost 2 years now, I've only received one thing from anyone, and that was the court. Around December of 2018, I received a letter from the court saying that the other party had requested that my hearing or trial, I guess it would be extended for 30 or 60 days. And the court granted that and said that they would send further communication about when the next trial would be. And I never heard anything else. I do want to talk a little bit about just sort of the general culture around student loan debt right now and what's going on. You hear stuff about debt forgiveness and you hear things about the Department of Education and the problems with like loan forgiveness there for public service and all the different things going on there. And I think this contributes to basically the way my lawyer thinks and talks about things. When I originally met with my lawyer, it was November 2017. She looked over all the paperwork I had. She looked over the past payments I made, what my loan balances were, and all inclusive of the situation, she's like, they don't have anything on you. You're totally fine. Like, absolutely gung-ho. We're going to countersue for FDCPA violations, all of these different things. And it just was very clear that I had a very great case. When I contacted her again in March of 2019, it was sort of a different story. And I gotta say, like, it was kind of depressing. I could see how disillusioned she was with the whole system from that time until now. And she just said, look, she's like, I know before I had you file with the CFPB complaints, they're useless now. The new administration has gutted them. You really don't have any consumer protections anymore at all. And before, she had told me she had only lost one lawsuit against these student loan companies, this student loan company in particular. And that attitude had now changed to, well, you're probably going to have to settle with them. So it definitely was demoralizing to see somebody who thought I had such a good case and was such an advocate before to kind of just be depressed when she talked to me later on. But this was all before the lawsuits were dismissed, and I don't think from what she said that she expected that to be the case at all. And in addition to the lawsuits, there was one other thing, maybe two other things that happened within the last year with this, and it was all to do with a collection account. Now, of the 3 credit bureaus, TransUnion was the only one that this account appeared on. And it showed up, maybe a year ago, something like that, maybe not quite a year ago. And it was my only collection account. And they started every month not only reporting it as a collection account and the balance, but they also reported it every month as a revolving account that I was 30 days late on. Now, I did look into this, and this is a very rare circumstance. I only found 2 references online to this being a thing that occurs. But I did find that it is illegal, and they cannot, I don't have a contract with this debt collection company. They cannot report, they can report it as a collection account, but they can't report it as an account that I hold with them as revolving credit that I'm 30 days late on, because I'm not late, I don't have a contract with them, and it's not revolving credit. And they certainly can't report it twice, the same account twice per month in 2 different ways, which is what they were doing, which has really hurt my credit over the past year or so. In fighting to change this and take that off there, I filed 2 different complaints with the CFPB, and essentially the CFPB is completely useless now. If you file a complaint with them, and this happened in both of these occasions, if you file a complaint against TransUnion, then they don't respond to it, and they literally delete the complaint. After the first one, I couldn't figure out why it was taking so long to get a response, because normally it's 30 days. I got no follow-up at all, and then when I finally went back into my account on there, it was just gone. So I filed it again because I was like, that's weird. And again, no response and just gone. I mean, the CFPB truly is just worthless now. And still with this same account that supposedly this one collection agency holds because they are reporting it twice every month in my credit report, another debt collector reached out to me and sent me a debt validation letter. Except that it wasn't a debt validation letter. It was a letter offering to settle. And they said, there's this account, you owe this large amount, and we'll take 25%. This is the first settlement offer I've received. But I've never been able to get any company to actually verify that this debt is mine. And I'm like, now, you can't be the right people that are supposed to have this debt, because this other company is already reporting it on my credit report. So what I did is I sent the standard debt validation letter to this company. And then this company started calling me. And they called several times a day, every day. And I gave them credit for the first few times because maybe they hadn't received the debt validation letter yet. But after they received that, due to the FDCPA, they have to stop. And they didn't. So I kept a list of all the numbers they called from, recordings of all the voicemails, names of everyone I heard from, and I filed a report with the CFPB. And they completely denied it. They completely denied that it was their number, that they had talked to me. They denied, even though I sent in copies of the tracking number and the receipt and everything for the debt validation letter I sent to them, they completely just blatantly lied to the CFPB and said that I never sent them a debt validation letter. So obviously I did, and I had proof I did, but they continued to lie about it. They didn't respond to it, which in itself is an FDCPA violation, and they gave me, through the FDCPA response portal, their email address, and they said, email us to discuss this. So I did. And I got a response right back from their, I think it was their claims or fraud department. And the person continued to insist, despite showing her proof, that I had not sent any of this. And she's like, well, we're going to send you this, and this proves that we are the company that you should be working with, or something like that. And I said, no, 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 no. I responded right back. I said, that is not sufficient. You can't just send me copies of the monthly internal statements from your company and say that that proves that you own this debt, because it doesn't. It doesn't prove anything, and it's not what I asked for in my debt validation letter. So I forwarded her a copy and pasted copy of the debt validation letter, and I got no further response. And then in January of this year, I followed up and I said, hey, you told the CFPB that you mailed stuff to me. I never received anything. You told me in this email you're going to mail me stuff. I never received anything. I was like, are you sending anything? And I didn't receive a response. So then again, probably April, I think it was, of this year, I got the same letter from them about the same debt, and just completely ignoring everything that happened before, offering me the same settlement offer. And so again, I emailed that email address, and I also mailed a debt validation letter to them, which they didn't respond to once again, but they did respond to the email, and they said, we never received any emails from you. And I was like, I'm literally responding to the same email chain from when you responded to my original email. So yes, you did. I was like, you told the CFPB you were going to mail these documents, and you didn't do that. You told me you were going to mail these documents, and you didn't do that. You continued to violate the FDCPA mandate that after I send you this letter, you cease contact. And so they sent me this letter, and I filed another CFPB violation, or a CFPB complaint. And again, I think this time they didn't respond. I can't remember now. They either didn't respond or they said the same thing again, and I just called them out, and the CFPB didn't do anything about it. But honestly, it's been so frustrating because, look, I don't have the money, but if I did, I have to make sure that whoever I pay is the right person. And when there are multiple companies out there saying, yeah, we're right, yeah, we're the people you need to pay, well, show me that, because you're not going to get any money until you do. So anyway, the goal for the following year, from July of this year to July of next year, is to continue getting my life back on track, saving up emergency fund and sinking funds, and getting things in my life back on track and fixed, and especially paying off debt like credit card debt. Because once I can get all that done, it's going to be like a full-on assault to just get these student loans paid off. And that's pretty much it. The student loans are pretty much right on where they were, just slightly less, and just within the last month or two, the Navient ones have started to really be noticeably less every month after I make the payment. So there'll be some progress there. But all in all, I'm working on things other than the student loans so that I can get everything else on track to get to the place where I really can focus on just the debt. But I am going to leave you guys with one goal that I have for the next year, and that is to look into refinancing my student loans. It's not something I really thought of until this year, but I'm currently in the process of refinancing my car loan, so I know it's something that I could potentially do with my student loans as well. When I do this, it's going to have to be after I'm no longer eligible for income-based repayments, because, I mean, my payments will probably be more even after I refinance. I'll save on interest, but really it's the minimum payment that's the problem right now, and just making that. So let's say in August, when I have to reapply for Navient's rate reduction program, if they're going to be like, nah, you've been on this 2.5 years, you need to pay the full payment, at that point, I no longer have any benefits of staying with Navient, because right now that is the only benefit of it. So at that point, I'll look into it. I do know that it's a little more difficult to do than it is for other types of debt, and it might be the case that I need to pay off my other debt first. I definitely think at least it would be easier and I would get a better rate. So in the meantime, that's what I'm focusing on, is to get my debt to income ratio down a lot lower, get my available credit up, and just basically, well, and boost my credit score, and then basically look, like a very good consumer who just happens to have a lot of student loan debt. And at that point, I think that I would be a more viable candidate for getting student loan refinance. I do know that things like SoFi, they look at a lot of different things. They look at income, length of employment. They look at, of course, credit, and you have to have a very high credit score for that. So I might not qualify for traditional loan refinancing just for the pure fact that I have so much in loans, because they do look at the amount of debt, and that makes no sense, but they look at the amount of debt that you have when they look at you to see if you're going to be qualified for that. So if that's the case, there are some alternative ways to get student loan refinancing, and maybe that's something that I'll look at that time. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for tuning in for this update. I really do appreciate it. I know that student loans are what I focus on, but unfortunately, I just have a lot of groundwork that I've got to cover first before I can even touch them. So right now, I'm just working on rebuilding everything else. With that said, I had a lot of you ask for a 6-month update on my financial goals. I really was just thinking of making an update at the end of the year to tell you how I did, but since everybody wants an update, I will have that. I'm hoping to have that up within the next week. And if any crazy thing happens, like anything with a lawsuit, or if I do end up getting my loans refinanced somehow, I will make a video and let you guys know about that.